5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we did. Oh man, Neil, we did a podcast. I did a podcast with Andrew Gould, where at the end of the podcast, he dropped a bomb on the conversation and suggested that there is a deep connection between orthodoxy and pirates. I have to admit that I was very offended by that remark.
Not only do pirates and monks both live in a certain ascetical isolation from the ways of the world, from the laws of the world, they both seek their adventure on a ship. They both accumulate treasure. Of course, there's the monks seeking their spiritual treasure, but even in a purely material parallel, the monks accumulate actual treasure. These two little micronations, the monks and the pirates, existing in the middle of the world, in the Mediterranean, and you've got the whole sort of boring, modernizing world, the world of, bankers and merchants circulating all around them.
So, I guess now I understand. So what you actually mean is that
This is Jonathan Pedro. Welcome to the Symbolic World.
So, hello everyone. We are here at the Art of Tamada in Florida Keys. Here with a lot of my great friends. Deacon Seraphim is running the camera. Neil DeGray just walked by, and I'm sitting here with Andrew Gould. And we thought, 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we did. Oh man, Neil, we did a podcast. I did a podcast with Andrew Gould, where at the end of the podcast, he dropped a bomb on the conversation and suggested that there is a deep connection between orthodoxy and pirates. I have to admit that I was very offended by that remark. But since then, we haven't talked about it. And I know that people have actually written emails to Andrew saying, please tell us the secret. What is the connection? So we thought that being here in Florida would be the perfect place to finally ask the question, what is the relationship between orthodoxy and piracy? And so, Andrew, you're going to have to lay this out for us, because I have to admit that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, what's the deal with pirates?
All right. So, like Orthodox monks, pirates flee the world for their adventure. And not only do pirates and monks both live in a certain ascetical isolation from the ways of the world, from the laws of the world, they both seek their adventure on a ship. The pirates, of course, on a pirate ship, and the monks in the ship of the church. And remarkably, in this adventure apart from the world, they both accumulate treasure. Of course, there's the monks seeking their spiritual treasure, but even in a purely material parallel, the monks accumulate actual treasure. In their separation from the world over the centuries, the monks practice beautiful liturgical crafts. They become icon painters, ecclesiastical jewelers, and the Orthodox monasteries of the old world have literal treasuries full of splendid gold and jewels, just like a pirate ship. It's one of the beautiful paradoxes of monasticism that those who flee the material pleasures of the world end up in the most beautiful place in the world. The monasteries are the treasuries of art that can rival any museum or any collection of a royal palace. So here we have two groups of people. They flee the world. They're apart from society. They're on their ship. They're accumulating treasures of all kinds. And I particularly love looking at how they dress also, because of course Orthodox monks dress like it's still the Byzantine Empire. They wear these splendid old-fashioned robes that come from the royal court dress of ancient Byzantium. And so these simple monks who in a sense own nothing or are strutting around dressed like princes and emperors. And we see the same thing in the popular images of pirates. Your classic pirate look with the big broad-brimmed hat cocked in an angle and the great splendid long coat and the twirly mustache. This is all the dress of the Cavaliers and the Jacobites of the 17th century. These are the royalist Englishmen who would dress up with this sort of House of Stuart Catholic swagger in the 17th century to show that they're opponents of the Puritans in their austere dress. And many of these, Jacobites, supporters of the exiled House of Stuart, they went pirate because they weren't welcome back in England. And so this popular image of pirates, all these pirate stories take place in the early 18th century, but the pirates are deliberately dressed like it's the mid-17th century. It shows that they kind of left the mundane, boring order of the modern world because they remembered a more glorious period of history, a more royalist period, more conducive to treasure seeking from the old days, and they go out in their pirate ships and they dress like they're aristocrats of the age of the House of Stuart. And so I think you can see these beautiful parallels on so many levels between the monks and the pirates. There's also some literal historical connections, because the Orthodox monks of the Mediterranean, of Mount Athos, were constantly under attack by actual pirates, the Barbary pirates. And just like the monks of Mount Athos created a little independent state, the monastic republic of Mount Athos, the pirates operated little pirate states on other Mediterranean islands and on the North African coast. These little sort of quasi kingdoms that existed outside international law. And of course the monks had to fortify their monasteries and defend their monasteries against pirate attacks. The pirates were always coming there because the monks had treasures. The pirates wanted those treasures. And so the monks and the pirates were, in a sense, two sides of the same society, two sides of one coin. They knew each other well. They knew how to fight. They knew how to negotiate. So in a sense, you have these two little micronations, the monks and the pirates, existing in the middle of the world, in the Mediterranean, and you've got the whole sort of boring, modernizing world, the world of, bankers and merchants circulating all around them.
So, I guess now I understand. So what you actually mean is that they're opposite of each other. That's what I'm getting, is that in some ways they represent two extremes within their extreme opposite end up mirroring, you could say, having a strange kind of weird reflection of one side or the other. Because, I think the best way for me to formulate what I think in terms of the idea that they're opposite is I do see that in some ways monks are an image of continuity and pirates are an image of disruption, right? So when I think of the fact that the pirates would wear these extravagant kind of passé costumes, I see it as the kind of caricature of death, that they are in some ways carnivalesque in their representation. They're representing a caricature of high society, a kind of dark inversion that is trying to imitate but also make fun of this type of hierarchy. And at the same time, and so in the monks, what they're trying to do is actually preserve the continuity. And so although there's something weirdly displaced about, like you said, them wearing these splendid robes, they're doing it in order to continue something which was threatened and is falling apart. And so you have these two images, one which is disruption, and with the image of the skull and crossbones as this image of death. And then the monks also, but it's funny because now I'm realizing that the monks also have this kind of aesthetic of death, right?
Yes.
But it's different, right? In some ways, it is the difference between Halloween and All Hallows, right? The difference between the carnival aspect, which is caricatural, which is off the rails, and then another image opposed to it, which is in some ways the true orientation towards death, right? So you could think that the pirates, what they want to do is cause death to others, right? They are basically there to kill people and to rape and to pillage. And the monks are saying, no, we need to die ourselves. Like, we need to be the ones that die. And you can see that, like you said, in some ways, both will use the image of the skull as an image of death, but they're opposed to each other.
That's right.
Hello there. Well, this is Martin Shaw, and I'm afraid whatever you had planned for January, scrap it. I am returning to Symbolic World gleefully with one of the great stories of our time, the Epic of Parzival, the story of the Holy Grail itself. Over 5 nights, I will be telling the tale. These will not be dry lectures or PowerPoint presentations. This will be wild, old, philosophical storytelling in its deepest dimensions. It is life-changing stuff, this story. I've written a book about it. I've been studying it for 20 years. I've told it all over the world, but I have not shared it with you. I've not shared it with Symbolic World. So what else would you want to do in the great wintering time but to sit at the feet of this wonderful story and let me be your guide? I'll see you there.
But here's an interesting way in which they're not opposites. One might argue that there's a similarity between them in that they both sort of pick a side and go all the way with it. Mm-hmm. So in Scripture, those who are lukewarm are condemned, and you can kind of see the monks and the pirates as those who are absolutely hot in their
if you're gonna sin,
choice. Just
sin, go all out.
So just to,
Thanks,
just
Martin Luther.
Thanks, Martin.
yes. So of course, what is the difference between ordinary Christians and monks? I think in a day-to-day sense, the difference is that the monks are the ones who say, like, if I believe the Christian story, if I believe that throwing myself behind Christ and asceticism is the way to eternal salvation, like, nothing else matters. Mm-hmm. There's no other moral that concerns me. I'm all in. I'm absolutely devoting my life to that path, and I'm just going to utterly leave all of the other pursuits, temptations of the world for that. And the pirates say much the same thing. The pirates kind of say, I'm all in for, like, money and pleasure in the moment, living in the pleasure of the moment, and the sort of outlaw glory and excitement that goes with that. That's the only moral for me. It's like no other ethic, no matter how obvious and basic, applies to me. I will do anything in the name of treasure, even though it is undoubtedly the path to a short life and a swift death. And so again, you see the strange sameness of how the pirates and the monks think and talk, mm-hmm. And then that leaves all of the rest of us, all the normal people of the world, in that sort of lukewarm middle where we're going to say, well, we're sort of Christians, we're sort of on God's side, but we also like to make money and we also like to be comfortable. Yeah. It's like we're kind of in between monks and pirates in our actual practice of our lives.
Yeah. And so I see how in some ways that would explain also why there's a fantasy of pirates, like the idea that pirates inhabit this space in our imagination and in our desires. They become an image of the desire that we have, or the tendency we have to kind of to stop bothering with all of these constraints and basically throw ourselves in a kind of nihilist pleasure seeking.
Yes.
And so for that reason, they occupy a space of fantasy in our life, in the same way that at least for Orthodox Christians, the monk also occupies a place of fantasy in our life, because we know that we're not willing to do that, but we admire the monks, we admire the people that are capable of doing it, and we want to get close to them so that we can kind of get a little bit of that. But I can see also why then, because sometimes you wonder, pirates were ruthless, horrible criminals. And so the question is, why do we fantasize about them? Why are all these fantasies
I think it's because we admire people who are principled, no matter what the principles are. There's a certain we recognize a certain virtue. I don't mean a moral virtue. I mean a more abstract sense of the word virtue. We recognize a certain humanistic power in being absolutely behind a principle. It's like the great men who changed the world are the men who are absolutely behind some ideological principle and go all the way with it.
Live it out. Yeah.
It's often a fallacious principle, and their efforts to live it out, are often murderous and tyrannical. But nevertheless, that's how they become great men in the old sense of great. And so we recognize that there's a certain human virtue in this, and going outlaw and going all the way and doing it with a certain stylistic splendor it's very appealing to us from a human standpoint.
What's going on with hooks and peg legs, hooked hands, peg legs, eye patches, parrots? Is there a monastic parallel to those things?
Well, I think that especially the parrot, we can think about it. I have never actually thought about the parrot, but for sure the hooks and the peg legs and all of these things they're an image of incompleteness. They're an image of death. That you're living with death. Like you're living with this. You're like you're half a human. You've lost parts for your desires, and so now you're assuming it, and you're living out. You continue to live with with this kind of crippled nature.
Yes, absolutely. But
they've turned it into an aesthetic, which is different from someone who lost a leg, because of gangrene or something, and they have a prosthetic leg. The pirate turns it into a kind of like, look at my glory, trophy. Like, look at what I lost. Like the surfer that gets bitten by a shark, kind of. And it's like, this is this thing that happened to me, and now but I'm still going on, and so the hook turns into a kind of image of power and glory.
Yeah,
it's like, look what I'm willing to lose to do this. Like, you should be afraid of me because I lost an arm getting treasure. So get out of my way because I'm gonna destroy everything. I don't care.
That's true. That's true. My leg was shot off by a cannonball, and my arm was cut off by a cutlass, and yet I didn't give up and get an easy job. Yeah. That just shows how all in I am, and it shows that death is. The fact that seeking of treasure as an outlaw inevitably leads to death does not trouble me. I'm already literally half dead. Yeah. Part of my body has died, and I'm still at it. And the monks are kind of like this also. And the holiest of the monks, they take the great schema, so they're literally walking around wearing a burial shroud, so showing that, I've essentially already died to the world.
But it's funny because the pirate, that aspect of the pirate aesthetic is very similar to American gangster aesthetics as well, right? There is this idea of being shot. I remember 50 Cent basically becoming famous because he was shot, in a criminal lifestyle, and that made him a superstar of that world. But then also even the aesthetic of the excess of gold and bling, and this kind of caricature of wealth and a caricature of status, which for people that are actually in the world of status, it looks like a kind of a joke. Yeah. But it does function in their own world as a display of power and status and riches.
So we've got some props in front of you here. We found a coconut on the beach, and also a bottle of rum on the beach.
This was brought by swallows, though.
Oh, it was brought by swallows. So. Obviously, piracy has happened in lots of places in the world, but the only kinds of pirates that have really captured anybody's imagination are the ones in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So what's up with that?
I mean, you can. I mean, I think that it has to do with what you're saying. It has to do with something between this transition between the old world of monarchy and the modern world, and they represent a kind of residue of a time where the state was not as powerful, where the kind of bureaucracy of the world was not as solid as it is now. And you feel this sense that it was a time when anything was possible, where all of these things could happen. Whereas now, it's like, if there's too many pirates, they'll just send a helicopter, just bomb them out of the water.
Pirates can only thrive.
A drone, yeah, exactly.
Pirates can only thrive in a power vacuum between empires, and that's what we have behind us here in the Caribbean. Right behind me, on my left, is Cuba, not very far over the horizon, and on the right, the Bahamas. And so, right behind us here, we have Spanish and English imperial domains. And it was because the Caribbean islands were this patchwork of Spanish and English rule, there was kind of a power vacuum. It was very easy for people to fly false flags, sneak past different navies, find islands that were claimed by no one, which was true of this island. In fact, the Florida Keys were outlaw territory through the entire 18th and even into the early 19th century. They were claimed by no empire and no country, not until like the 1830s. So the Florida Keys, along with the Outer Banks of North Carolina and many other islands in between, they were places that pirates could actually build hideouts, just like in the movies, and not really be subject to anyone's laws.
So just thinking about the symbolism of piracy, this is not so much connected to monastics, but, in some ways what's interesting about that moment is there's also a way in which the empires are able to weaponize pirates to their advantage, right? So in some ways it's like, we're actually not going to do anything about this because we can see how it's damaging the other side. You see that in a lot of the Islamic piracy, for example, where, they're not being sent by anyone, but we're kind of happy that they're pillaging Sicily, and so there's this, I think that there's something about that too, where because of this buffer between two empires, they can also exist because maybe the British see them a little bit as helpful if they're attacking the Spanish.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And the Barbary pirates thrived because you had the Catholic empires of Europe to the north, and you had the Ottoman Empire that nominally controlled North Africa to the south. And both the pirates and the monks existed in this odd space between empires. The Catholics nominally ruled Greece at times. The Ottoman Empire ruled Greece at times. Nobody really touched Mount Athos. And just like, even though piracy wasn't really legal under the Ottoman Empire really didn't trouble itself too much with these North African coastal pirate cities. They existed in a little bit of a power vacuum, and that power vacuum was intermittently helpful to both empires, so nobody did too much to stop it.
Yeah, and so do you see a parallel, because I'm trying to see, is there a opposite parallel in terms of the monks as being in some ways beyond the empire's desires, or playing a role that is beyond like the divisions of the empire? Like why did nobody ever care to deal with Mount Athos, let's say, in that moment of shift between Catholic and Byzantine power, let's say?
Well, I don't know. I think everyone recognizes that there's some value to society to have monks stand as a sort of rebuke to the decadence of the world. We don't actually, even the decadent people of the world don't want a world where everyone is decadent, because the decadent people kind of want to be at the top of the hierarchy of decadence, which means they like having holy men as a foil to that. They just don't like them being very close at hand. They like the holy men being far away on a distant island where you can listen to them if you want to, and you can ignore them if they want to. I think everybody was probably pretty pleased to have Mount Athos located at the border between the Venetian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. They could sort of rebuke either side, and either side could say, we don't have to listen to you, you're way over there, you're beyond our border.
So, I mean, I'm happy to at least hear that the vision is still a kind of opposite. I see how you're trying to always connect them together, but that in fact it is in some ways two extremes in that are meeting on the edge, because that, in some ways that's why the pirates would attack Mount Athos, is because Mount Athos was also kind of on the edge of the empire, that it wasn't in the middle. Like you couldn't attack some monastery in Constantinople or inside. So there was this contact on the fringe. And in some way, it's interesting because you can think about how the monks also, in their extreme practice, because they are out on the edge in this way, they also have this interaction between demons and angels, you could say, or between the saints and the demons. And they're in some way closer to the demons than we are, because they kind of stand on the edge. And that seems to have been, in some ways, even practically. Right? When you go to Mount Athos, it's beautiful because it's all fortified. But it's fortified because pirates would just come and kill the monks and rampage through the monasteries. And so how do you see how can I say this? Like, do you think it's... One of the things we saw with Disney is with their Pirates of the Caribbean, they were able to give us a version of piracy that is completely whitewashed, right? So basically these pirates, they're virtuous, they don't seem to be doing anything evil, they actually don't seem to kill and rape and pillage, although it's hinted very subtly that they do, in a way that they're able to actually present them as the heroes in the story. And so I'm curious to know what you think of that, the capacity to represent it that way.
Well, I love those movies, but it is interesting how they had to, for each movie, they had to give the pirates some adventure that was outside of just normal pirating. You get, in the first movie, in The Curse of the Black Pearl, when the Black Pearl attacks Port Royal, you get your only glimpse in those movies of like what actual pirating looks like, where they sail into a normal town and blast it with cannonballs and run in and kill and steal. It's very ugly to see. It kind of sets up this is the dark terror of pirates. But then the plot begins, and of course the plot is that they have this curse, and there's a piece of gold, and they have to find it and do this magic ritual, and every one of the movies has some kind of a plot like that is the plot is more than just pirating.
Piracy.
Yeah, it's some legitimate adventure where they have to break some curse or find some heir to a bloodline, and so the pirates actually go off on an adventure that you can really root for them, because it's a great adventure and not an evil adventure. Yeah, so that is a difficulty with pirate stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah.
And what about then?
It's kind of the same with monk stories, though. It's like nobody wants to hear the story of a monk where it's just the monk spent years and years fasting and praying. That's a boring story. Any like really good hagiography about a monk is where the monk has to go off on some adventure and do something that's like not normal, just monking.
Yeah. Just monking. And then there's the other story. Which you can comment on with this Victorian fantasy of the conversion of the pirate, right? So in the Pirates of Penzance, if people know the story with Gilbert and Sullivan, there's a sense in which if you were able to call upon high enough for good, right? If you were able to ask them to submit or to be loyal to the right level, that all of a sudden you could transform these pirates into something more. So in the story, basically the pirates are doing their pirate thing and they're being horrible and they're trying to kidnap these girls, and at some point they call upon their loyalty to the queen, and they all kind of fall into rank and say, well, we're still pirates, we love all this stuff, but we love our queen so much that we're willing to yield and to submit. So obviously I don't know if the queen, but the fantasy of, in some ways, the criminal or the gangster, we see that in the story of St. Moses the Black, for example, St. Moses the Ethiopian, that if he is able to see a high enough good, then that power gets given to the good. So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I agree. I
possibility.
think for us to identify with pirates and root for pirates in a story, the pirates have to have enough of their humanity left that seems possible.
Mm-hmm.
If they've degenerated to the point of being nothing more than the passions, we really couldn't identify with them as heroes in the story. But if they seem like broken people that still have a kernel of virtue somewhere down there, that they can rise to the occasion of doing good when it needs to be done, and you see that constantly through the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. That allows for us to root for them as the sort of the noble outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two questions. First question is sea shanties. Anything going on there symbolically?
I don't know anything about sea shanties.
Okay. All right, so,
I'm sure Andrew knows about sea shanties.
Well, I know a few sea shanties. I mean, they're typically just work songs. They're not exactly pirating songs. There are songs about pirates. Of course, the actual reality of historical pirates is they did not live very long, and they tended to meet their end in a watery grave. So it's like, if the pirates had actual pirate songs among themselves that were any good, I'm not sure. I'm not sure any of those survived to us. But there's certainly plenty of good ballads about pirates. I love those.
Because I'm sure that in the world of pirates, and that's important to notice, that outside of the story version or the mythical version, they were as much in danger between themselves as what they would encounter on the outside. Probably had a tendency to kill each other
constantly,
as much as they did, kill the others.
Absolutely.
So second question for each of you. We'll start with you, Jonathan. What's your favorite pirate movie?
What's my favorite? I don't have a favorite pirate movie. I think that the Pirates of the Caribbean, obviously,
kind of anti.
I could know. Look, I like the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie, but I also despise those movies for how convoluted and narratively empty they are. So I like the characterization, of course, that Johnny Depp brings to the pirate, and that's really, it's fun because it's so weird and it's so out of whack that you can't stop but look at this person because it's so fascinating to see something like that. But I get annoyed with those movies because it's so convoluted and so many, like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. I don't even know, what are they doing? What are they getting this one thing so they can get the other thing, so they can get the other thing, and you don't even know what's going on.
I'll tell you my favorite scene in a pirate movie. This is in Pirates of the Caribbean number 5,
Oof,
I believe it is.
I don't think I even watched that one.
You haven't even watched number 5.
Goodness.
So in movie...
I didn't even know there were 5.
I know.
Yeah. So this is Dead Men Tell No Tales. Captain Barbossa has taken over Queen Anne's Revenge from Blackbeard, and he's built up a whole fleet of pirate ships because Queen Anne's Revenge is undefeatable among ships. And so he's now a pirate admiral, and he's unimaginably wealthy. And so you see this scene where he is at his leisure on his pirate flagship, and he's converted the captain's chambers of Queen Anne's Revenge into like an aristocrat's splendid parlor, where all the walls are gilded and it's just mountains and mountains of treasure. All the decks of the ship are overflowing with gold and jewels, and he's lying back twirling his mustache in his chamber, and the part that absolutely thrills me is he has a little Baroque chamber orchestra that he has hired. So there's a musician there, cellos and violins
this is just
and
your
things.
Ideal life.
Oh, it is. So he's got his little Baroque chamber orchestra, in there with him, playing Handel or something like that. And he's just lying back twirling his mustache, the most successful pirate of all time. And then his doom comes for him. His doom is the ghost, the Spanish ghost Captain Salazar.
I've already stopped knowing what's going on.
Well, maybe you didn't see the movie, but well, anyway, Captain Salazar, he essentially died decades ago. He was lured into some magic cave by Jack Sparrow. His ship was wrecked. Anyway, due to various instances of sea magic, the Captain Salazar, who's basically now a ghost captain on a ghost ship, emerges from his cave, and his ship was a huge Spanish 5-decker, the biggest ships ever built, and huge enemy of pirates. And he comes out as this ghost captain on a ghost ship, and the ship is skeletal. It just looks like bones. It sort of looks like the bones of Leviathan, just its ribs and things. And it comes up to Captain Barbossa's pirate ship, which is much smaller, and his ship, Captain Salazar's ship, opens up like a monster, like it's going to be the monster, swallowing Job, but it's this sort of skeletal demon monster with a ghost captain, and it looks very much like the Orthodox icon of the Last Judgment, where there's the giant monster coming up, out of sort of this fiery ocean of hell to swallow everything, and it's just a magnificent image of the sort of end point of the most successful pirate, and his end point of hell coming for him.
So I have to say, I just figured out the parrot. So I'm like, it's just running. I'm like, I need to figure this out before the end of the conversation.
Why does Polly want a cracker?
Yeah, no, but I think that it's related to this idea of caricature that I'm talking about when I talk about parrots. Is that the parrot represents an illusion of meaning, right? It's an illusion of coherence, and it's an illusion of sense. And so this idea of the parrot I think is an image of the fact that the pirates are this illusion. They're this caricature of civilization, right? They wear all this gold and they look like a kind of joke on an aristocrat, but it's empty ultimately. And I think that that's what the parrot represents. It's like a burp, right? It's like this reaction to meaning, or this fake version of what meaning is. What do you think? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So my favorite pirate movie is Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, Basil Rathbone, Captain Blood, which I think was Flynn's first film. And to me, it is the quintessential like swashbuckling pirate film, and it has actually all of the elements that you're describing. He's like a surgeon that helps a wrong person during the English Civil War and gets driven out of England. And so because of that, he basically ends up taking up this life of piracy, and then eventually just totally gives himself over to it and kind of loses himself in the identity of piracy. And then he meets this young woman who he like basically captures from another pirate, I think. Is that Olivia? I think it's Olivia de Havilland in that movie. Anyway, yeah, it is. So he meets this young woman, and then basically she becomes a way for him to redeem himself. But in order to do that, he's got to kill his big pirate rival in the climactic duel of the film. So it has actually all the various elements of like the outcast and the kind of the dissipation, and then ultimately the big scene at the end. The most quintessentially English thing to me is this idea that, oh yeah, you might be a bad guy, but as soon as you know like, oh, but you could do this for the king, you could do this for the queen, and you're like, oh, all right, yeah, sure, didn't think of that before. And so the big thing that happens is that at the end of the movie, it's announced to them that William and Mary have come in and they've taken over things, and so they're all pardoned, and so then they're like, all right, great, let's go kill the Spanish now. And that's how the movie ends.
That's how it ends.
So.
Well, I love that ends with a certain redemption, and I have to say another reason that I so enjoy Pirates of the Caribbean #5 is because it ends with a redemption like that for Captain Barbossa. The story of the movie is essentially that a woman appears who turns out to be Captain Barbossa's daughter, and he's sort of gradually figuring this out over the course of the movie that this woman is his daughter. And she challenges him at one point for his lifestyle and says, "Is treasure worth dying for?" And he responds, "I'm a pirate," and walks away. Of course, treasure is worth dying for a pirate. But then eventually Captain Salazar comes for her, and Captain Barbossa has a moment of trial where the only way he can save this woman, whom he now realizes is his daughter, the only way he can save her is if he gives up his own life fighting Captain Salazar. And in this moment of struggle among the three of them, she pulls back on his sleeve, revealing a tattoo on his arm that matches a symbol that she knows from her past. And she realizes all of a sudden in this moment of death that he is her father.
Very important to get those tattoos when your kids are young.
I know, so they know.
If you ever separate
Exactly.
you'll figure it out.
Exactly.
Meet in a pirate duel.
In this moment of struggle where it's clear that two of the three of them are going to die, she suddenly realizes that Captain Barbossa is her father. And he suddenly sort of makes a move to put himself in front of her, and she is astonished, because she thinks he's the worst of a selfish pirate. And she says to him, "Who am I to you?" And he just looks at her and says, "Treasure." And then he gives up his life to take out Captain Salazar. Oh, it's splendid. So the point is, at the very last moment of Barbossa's life, he's actually willing to value something other
more valuable
than gold and jewels, but he's not willing to say, like,
I'm not a pirate.
I'm not giving up my life for love or family. It's still treasure. It's just I'm going to say you're the treasure. I love that sort of partial repentance.
So one of the things I did not expect to come out of Art of Automata was simultaneously from the same person, a take on why Thomas Kincaid's paintings have bad theology, but then also like an apologia for the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. I just couldn't have foreseen any of this. This is why you have to come to these things.
All right, yeah, everybody has to come to Florida, to the Keys, to hang out with us for sure.
All right, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone. This was a lot of fun.